Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 52 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010. This episode of Impact begins with a look back at the ending of last week's show, the brawl between the TNA Dream Team and the New Age being replayed, Claudio Castagnoli, Chris Hero and Tyler Black trying to blindside AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy and Sting, but the three more established names were able to keep on an even footing with them. Myro and Taz welcome viewers to the show before introducing what happened after the show went off the air. So this is a continuation from the previous episode of Impact, the brawl continuing until security came out, swarming the ringside area and eventually managing to keep the two sides apart. The chaotic ending to Impact was just a preview of what is to come this Sunday at Turning Point. Tonight is the go home show and AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy will be in action in tonight's main event. They will face Kazarian and Daniels, who will speak later in the evening about the huge implications that this match will have on their future. So not only are we seeing two of the top names in the company in action, there is also going to be something extra added to that match, and that's something Kazarian and Daniels will discuss before that main event match. But we go into the opening match of the evening, the other side of last week's main event. Shelton Benjamin picked up a victory over Robert Roode. This week it's reversed, Beer Money's James Storm defeating WGTT's Charlie Haas, 11 minutes and 36 with a lung blower, prefer the last call super kick, but the idea is that Robert Roode comes out, causes a bit of a distraction as Charlie Haas looks to lock in the Haas of Pain. From here, James Storm can pick up the victory, but it is tainted. It's not that good of a match. Charlie Haas not doing really well. Storm okay, a 65 is fine, but it's probably fair to say after last week's match that the other two guys are currently the stars of their team. And with Roode already at ringside, Shelton Benjamin comes out to join Charlie Haas in the ring, but Beer Money get out of there before there can be any sort of confrontation. Storm and Roode have now taken microphones from ringside and they address the words of WGTT from last week. Roode says that when somebody tells a lie and keeps repeating it like Haas and Benjamin have, everybody will eventually begin to believe it. Some teams call themselves the greatest team in the world and pander to the fans until they say it back to them. Others get in the ring and prove it year in and year out. James Storm adds that seeing these two walk into TNA and pretend that it's 2003 all over again has been good for a laugh, but at Turning Point, they're going to learn that times have changed. They can't keep coasting on their reputation from the past, and Storm says that it's been a long time since Haas and Benjamin could call themselves anything close to the best tag team in the world. Storm and Roode will put the final nail in the coffin of that suggestion this Sunday, and then they'll go on to get their rematch for the World Tag Team Championships that they've been owed since Hard Justice. So Roode improvising well, Storm seemingly doing okay in a solid segment. We then go into a not very good segment that does advance three of our storylines. Doesn't say it loses heat to him, so that might be a saving grace, but it's certainly not the level that you want. And Jimmy Jacobs is shown in an unknown location. It does look like it is inside the Impact Zone, and he speaks about the night ahead for the New Age. Looking to the 6 members of the group that surround him, Jacobs predicts a quiet evening for them because their focus is on this Sunday. Turning Point is their pay-per-view debuts, and the name couldn't be more apropos. Turning Point is just that, but not for the New Age's path. That has been set into motion long ago. That is written in stone. Sunday is a turning point in terms of how the fans perceive them, and more importantly, how they perceive their opponents. For the few doubters who remain, Alyssa Flash, Mischief and Sara Del Rey will leave with the Knockouts gold in their possession, while Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black will put the Dream Team to sleep once and for all, and then there could be no questions and no doubts. At Bound for Glory, the New Age arrived. At Turning Point, they prove that they are here to stay. So a short little promotion for the 3 matches involving New Age members at the pay-per-view, as well as the claim that they're going to have a quiet night. Last week they weren't supposed to be in the building, then they showed up in that final segment, so Jimmy Jacobs isn't to be trusted basically. Angelina Love and Velvet Sky then stand in the ring, introducing the debut of the Beautiful People show on Impact. We've had it on Explosion a few times to try it out, but it's made its way onto Impact as they introduce their guests on this episode, Jay Lethal and Maria Kanellis, and they say that this is going to be a show to remember. Jay Lethal talks about what he's been through over the last few months, and he does open up, even though Love and Sky are asking questions that are deliberately designed to needle him, questioning why Maria's still with him, and Maria getting a retort in on his behalf, reminding them that they lost last week, so they can't really come here and suggest that Jay Lethal's a loser. They need to focus on themselves. Jay Lethal continues on. He talks about everything that's happened and how it has taught him never to waste a moment. It's mostly stuff that was covered in that video package last week. The important thing is that Jay Lethal then takes something out of his pocket and gets on one knee. The beautiful people scream out in shock. They knew nothing about this, neither did Maria, but before she can answer, the music of Matt Morgan hits and he and Madison Rayne come down to the ring. Matt Morgan laughs at the idea of Maria marrying somebody like Jay. He's essentially implying she can do a lot better, while Madison suggests that Maria has taken the joke too far. Come on, she's obviously been leading Jay Lethal along, but now she needs to put him out of his misery. Lethal looks absolutely furious with this, especially when he sees how upset Maria is. She runs off crying, of course. Jay Lethal follows close behind her. Matt Morgan's loving it, finding it hilarious. Even the beautiful people think he's gone too far, but it's had the desired effect because it's absolutely ruined Jay Lethal's proposal. Eric Young then defeats Austin Creed in 7 minutes and 51. The captain of Team Canada is hit by Larry Sweeney on the head with a iPhone, or were iPhones out in 2010? I think they were. It causes the DQ because EY setting up to beat Austin Creed, maybe has him set up for the pile driver, and Sweeney just cracks it against his head. With EY down in the ring, Larry joins Austin in the 6 sides. Creed isn't quite sure what happened, but is actually a little bit annoyed when EY is announced as the winner by DQ. Shortly after, Sonjay Dutt runs down to check on EY, as well as running off Austin Creed and Larry Sweeney in the process. Sonjay Dutt sends a warning to Larry, which he obviously wants passing on to Kazuchika Okada, who isn't here tonight, signalling his intent to leave this Sunday as the X Division champion. Larry Sweeney takes a microphone once at a safe distance, as he usually does, and he says that Kazuchika Okada isn't here tonight because he's busy preparing to lead Team Japan to the top of the World X Cup rankings on Saturday. 24 hours after that, however, he'll be ready to focus on Sonjay Dutt, put him down for good, and prove that Dutt's true destiny is the same as it ever was. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride, and he isn't leaving with the X Division Championship. So Sweeney's done a lot of pushing in terms of the storylines for the X Division, as well as being involved in the World X Cup. I think having him focus on that division does give it a little bit of something different, and of course Dutt has done a really good job since coming back. We then see Lashley, who is preparing for his 6 sides of steel match with Samoa Joe this Sunday, training inside an MMA cage. A montage is shown of his preparation for this rubber match between the two men. Both previous matches taking place at Bound for Glory, one in 2009, one in 2010. So this is the final showdown between them. Lashley speaks to the camera, and having pushed himself in training, he is out of breath. He is dripping with sweat, and he takes pride in that. He says that his preparation is what sets him and Samoa Joe apart. His fitness, his athleticism. Look at him and look at Joe, and it's quite clear what the difference is. He's put Bound for Glory out of his mind, but he'll never forget what went down and how it happened. He will not only enter the 6 sides of steel to beat Samoa Joe this Sunday, he's coming to Turning Point to punish him. So Lashley doing a really good job of improvising. We then get a interview with Kazarian and Daniels, and we've been teasing what this is about all night, and Jeremy Borash straight up asked them, what is this huge implication that they've been touting? Everybody wants to know, and Daniels takes the lead, explaining that when 2009 ended, we were talking about this fresh start, and when he looks back, at that time, he was competing for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then a few months later, Kazarian was the X Division champion. Beer Money said it a few weeks back themselves, and it was true. Guys like Kazarian, Daniels and Storm and Rude are the forefathers of TNA Wrestling, but since Kazarian and Daniels started working together, things haven't quite worked out. Tomko didn't work out, Morgan didn't work out, and now it's just the two of them. Apart, they were great, so together they should be the best, right? Well, that hasn't quite worked out either. Kazarian then takes over the last part of the interview. He wants to get straight to the point. if we lose to AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy tonight, we are done as a duo. So a big bombshell there from Frankie Kazarian, who improvises well. It's an okay promo, but the implication, I think, is massive. Kazarian and Daniels, if they don't beat AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy, and let's be honest, they're probably not the favourites for that match, they're done as a duo. Tara then defeats Christina Von Erre in 5 minutes and 47. That seems a little bit long. I'm not sure why I gave it that long, but it's a fairly straightforward, decisive victory for Tara. The only thing that sort of makes it a little bit different than just being a squash match is that there's the idea on commentary that Christina Von Erre kind of is a New Age hopeful. She's impressed by them. She maybe says a few things at the start of the match that implies that she wants to prove herself to Jimmy Jacobs. She gets some offense in, but it is mostly one-sided, and Tara does pick up a decisive victory. After the match, Mickie James joins her tag team partner in the ring, but they immediately go on the defensive upon the entrance of the New Age. Once Jimmy Jacobs and co reach the ring, the leader of the New Age looks to assure the Knockouts tag team champions that they're not here to cause any trouble tonight. He just wants to talk. But before we find out whether that's true, Awesome Kong comes out from the back and makes a beeline for the ring. Not looking to engage now that the numbers are evened up, Jacobs directs Alyssa Flash, Mischief and Sarah Del Rey out of the ring, but somehow finds himself stuck between a rock and a hard place. The three women have left the ring, but as he is stopped in his tracks by Mickie James and Tara, he becomes separated from the members of the New Age. Awesome Kong grabbing him by the neck. Jacobs is terrified as the woman who he has tormented for almost 6 months. She has so much to hold against this man. He was her manager, turned his back on her at Slammiversary. Then the New Age screwed Awesome Kong out of the Knockouts Championship at Bound for Glory. Kong picks the New Age leader up and throws him to the outside. Alyssa Flash, Mischief and Sarah Del Rey do look to break his fall, but Jacobs is clearly shaken up. They have to help him to the back. Awesome Kong is very focused, very determined. She wants that Knockouts Championship back. Returning to the second hour of Impact, James Mitchell and Abyss come down to the ring, with Mitchell confirming and promoting that Kurt Angle versus Abyss will be a last man standing for the World Heavyweight Championship at Turning Point. He reiterates the points that he's made in previous weeks. There can be only one. This isn't a unification match, it's just the idea that I'm dropping the global championship, but the father of the monster promises a massacre this Sunday, with Abyss completing his rise back to being the most dominant force in TNA. The idea now being that with the sinister minister back, he can return to the monster he once was. Mitchell is cut off as Kurt Angle comes down to the ring. He is fired up, and in a little bit of a mirroring of what Mitchell and Abyss have done, he lays his championship between himself and the challenger. After weeks of beatdowns, he wants to fight Abyss right now. He doesn't give a damn that the pay-per-view is in a few days. Before Mitchell can decide what his move is, Paul Heyman comes to the top of the ramp and calls everything to a halt. Emotions are getting a little bit high, so the man in charge decides to intervene. Heyman promotes the match between the undisputed, unbeatable World Heavyweight Champion and the monster who hasn't been stopped in over 15 months. Something has to give at Turning Point as Kurt Angle defends his World Heavyweight Championship against Abyss. The two men going nose to nose, but no physicality in the segment. Mitchell managing to keep Abyss under control, and Heyman's words seemingly resonating with Kurt Angle. The idea of bringing Paul Heyman in here was to help the segment. It's probably done a little bit better. We've been getting 70, 71, 72. So a 77 is better and does actually gain heat to the storyline, but it's not the best sign going into the pay-per-view main event. We then get a quick backstage segment before the fourth match of the evening. Mr. Anderson approaches Sean Bashir in the catering area. Despite their recent falling out, Bashir is immediately on board once Anderson says he has a job for him. We don't know what this is, but he just senses an opportunity to return back to Anderson's favour. He throws the food he was eating down to the table and follows Mr. Anderson. Very subservient from Sean Bashir, especially after what Anderson has said to him in the past, but a decent segment actually that sets up something that happens later on. The fourth match is another squash match. Joe destroys Bruce Santee, who is actually a TNA alumni. In the early days, he was in a tag team, I think, Joe makes him tap out to the Kikina clutch in 3 minutes 46. That's probably again a little bit longer than I would have normally done it. I think I would have done that as a 2-minute match normally. Joe with a really good performance though. He then takes a microphone from ringside and responds to Bobby Lashley's video package from earlier. He says that while Lashley takes months between fights and picks and chooses his opponents, Joe is in this ring night in and night out, facing whoever he's told to fight. Back in January, Lashley bullied his way into getting a brand new golden deal. He can come and go as he pleases, work for other fighting promotions and still get his paycheck from TNA at the end of the month. Joe sees that as a slap in the face to everybody who does this week in and week out. But what Joe has that Lashley doesn't is his self-respect. He turns up every night, whether it's TV, pay-per-view or an untelevised house show, and he tells Lashley that all the sparring in the world won't prepare you for being in the ring. Certainly not inside these 6 sides this Sunday at Turning Point. So Joe getting the storyline back up there after we lost a bit of heat through Lashley's promo, and with the vast majority of storylines underwhelming in terms of the ratings, it has pretty much been Joe who's carried the company through this month. He's been putting in the best promos, the best in-ring performances of anybody. Maybe AJ can put in a better performance than Joe later tonight in that main event. Fingers crossed, because I do think that has potential to be a really good main event. But Bryan Danielson is then shown in the back with Brian Kendrick and Paul London, and he apologises to the duo for getting involved last week in their match, saying that it was none of his business, and having taken a step back, he completely gets it now. Brian laughs it off, playing down the rift and suggesting it was water under the bridge. It's not even crossed their mind this week. Paul London is slightly less agreeable, saying that he stands by his actions. He thought Brian did overstep the mark last week, but he's not going to let a years-long friendship be ruined over a few crosswords. Bryan Danielson is happy with this resolution and leaves the locker room. London and Kendrick back on the same page. It was only a little bit of bickering last week, nothing too serious. In the 5th match of the night, Sarita picks up a victory over Jazz decisively. A good performance from Sarita. It's 6 minutes. Jazz came in for that storyline with Tara mostly. It was actually only a 3-month deal, and then I think Dixie extended a contract, so we've got her, but I've not got massive plans for her. She is a valuable member of the roster, but it's a victory for Sarita, who long term we definitely see more in. Taylor Wilde came out to scout during the match. Sarita celebrates her victory in the ring, continuing a decent run of recent victories for the former Knockouts Tag Team Champion. I've put Sarah Del Rey on screen by mistake, doesn't really matter, but need to pay more attention. Having seemingly come out to scout the match, Taylor Wilde applauds her former partner's victory, but leaves without any further interaction. Sarita looks intrigued by Wilde's presence briefly, but continues focusing on celebrating her win. She doesn't want any distractions from that. Mike Tenay then conducts a decent sit-down interview with the Motor City Machine Guns, advancing the storyline but not doing anything for it either way. Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin reflect on the year that they've had. Despite there being ups and downs, they speak with pride at being the World Tag Team Champions and agree with Mike Tenay's sentiment that 2010 has been a coming of age year for the two of them. They've grown as competitors and they've grown as people, but more importantly, they've grown as a tag team. At Bound for Glory, they went up against two of the most highly respected and credible teams in the business, and they came out on top. They went into 10-10-10 as these underdogs, as this fairy tale story, but after what they did in Full Metal Mayhem, that whole dynamic has changed. They want to put across in this interview that they're not just the young prospects anymore, they have arrived. They say that Homicide and Hernandez are tough guys, and they know that nothing is guaranteed, especially at this level of competition. However, they promise that a different MCMG is walking into this pay-per-view, and they're going to prove why they deserve to stand at the very top of the greatest tag team division in the world. And the idea, not only with this promo, of course we want it to be a good promo to sell the pay-per-view match, but it's also that word coming of age. I want to transition them into slightly different characters now, mainly because they both have degenerate gimmicks which are poorly rated and it doesn't help them well. Alex Shelley's we see is awful, hopefully it's better. A very good rating, that's very nice to see, and again adequate for Chris Sabin. So this one was a bit more of a risky change. Very good as well, so really happy with those, and hopefully we should see that have a positive impact on their ratings going forward, starting with their match against LAX at Turning Point. Very happy with that. Returning then to ringside, we actually get a disappointing segment here. Considering it's the go-home segment of what has been, I think, a pretty decent storyline, it's disappointing to lose heat. But Mr. Anderson comes out, struggles when going off script, which is very, very rare for him. But he promotes this Sunday's match with Jeff Jarrett. He mocks Jeff, first starting out with light-hearted jokes, before getting a little bit more personal. He's trying to get under the skin of Jeff Jarrett. Clearly, that's basically all he ever tries to do. But with turning point in just a few days' time, Anderson suggests that Jeff comes down and they have a civilized conversation before the pay-per-view. Instead of Jeff, Sean Bashir comes out dressed in an ill-fitting old-school Double J attire. Bashir parodies Jeff's mannerisms and carries a guitar with him. And to be fair, this kind of segment can always be hit or miss, so taking the risk, and it's not paid off really. Unfortunately, coming off badly in the final segment of this storyline before the pay-per-view. Before long though, Jeff Jarrett comes out behind Bashir and drops him. No nonsense from Jeff, he just beats the crap out of Bashir and then throws him into the guardrail. He's sending a message to Mr. Anderson, standing at the bottom of the ramp and staring up at his opponent. Mr. Anderson then looks to further rile him, telling him to say hi to Jeff's wife Karen, saying that he's seen the way that she looks at Anderson and he thinks that she might be ready to move on to her next member of the TNA roster. Of course, referencing the fact that she was previously married to Kurt Angle. At this point, Jeff snaps, picking up the guitar and marching towards the ring. The two men then jostle for control of the guitar, with Mr. Anderson obviously not wanting to be smacked over the head with it. Eventually, he manages to throw it to the outside. He can't quite overpower Jeff Jarrett, but he can make it that that weapon is no longer a threat. In doing so, he turns back straight into a stroke. Jeff Jarrett standing tall over Mr. Anderson, the first time in the storyline that he's got the better of him, so a cathartic moment for Jeff Jarrett. But this is just the start. He wants more, and he wants a turning point in the fight that's going to go down between these two men. And moving on from that, Mauro Ranallo and Taz look to switch attention to the main event, but they hear of an incident that has taken place in the back. Cutting away from ringside, we see that Bryan Danielson has been found out cold, not far from the locker room where he was speaking with London Kendrick. Brian Kendrick is with his friend who looks seriously hurt, but nobody else other than the medics can be seen, while there are a number of people who Danielson has crossed paths with and maybe rubbed up the wrong way since debuting. There is nothing to link anybody with the attack at the moment. Brian Kendrick clearly concerned, but we do have to go into this main event, which is disappointing. Good performances from Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles, a good performance from Christopher Daniels, but AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy picking up a victory clean when Jeff Hardy pins Christopher Daniels with a swanton bomb, hopefully just putting across how exciting and enjoyable AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy are to watch, especially together. And there's going to be that third component, Sting, in that team at Turning Point. During the match, we see him up in the rafters, just observing, watching his two partners. I'm tempted to say that it's almost more important than the World Heavyweight Championship match. I do still think Angle's defense will go as the main event, but I'd say that the biggest draw for the pay-per-view probably is the Dream Team versus the New Age. For some people, it's probably Lashley and Joe, actually, and in terms of the storyline heat ratings, that probably is actually the case, but a clean victory and Bad Influence is breaking up here. Kazarian and Daniels said that they were done as a duo if they lost, and they have lost. This moment actually being overshadowed by AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy winning, and the fact that there's that big pay-per-view match following their huge victory. AJ and Jeff stand tall. Even if we were going to give a little spotlight to Kazarian and Daniels, that's taken away because of Jimmy Jacobs coming out. So even more reason for those two guys to be bitter and resentful. Initially just standing at the top of the ramp, Jacobs looks up, switching the focus of AJ and Jeff towards the rafters. With a spotlight on him, we see Sting once again, but this time he is unconscious, being held up by Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black. When focus returns down below, Jimmy Jacobs has got out of there wisely as a frantic AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy leave the ring, looking to get to their partner and hopefully make sure nothing else can happen to him. They run to the back and out of sight, the show ending with Sting in a familiar location. We've seen him in the rafters time and time again, but a situation that he certainly isn't used to, being taken down by Chris Hero, Castagnoli and Tyler Black, who present the head of Sting as Impact goes off the air. the commentators promoting that these three men will debut as a trio, the New Age, facing the TNA Dream Team this Sunday. AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy and Sting not only out to prove a point now, but out for revenge, and that is a okay rating, but I think a really good segment. Again, in game doesn't add heat to the storyline, but in my mind does. I think the idea of them having Sting there, the disrespect of that segment is only going to add more fire, and hopefully that results in a great match, this clash of generations at the pay-per-view. So it's an average episode really. It's just how it is at the minute with the storylines that I've chosen to do. I think over the next month, November into December, and then into 2011, we will be back up in the higher ratings. But a 75 is perfectly acceptable. It's still adding popularity to us, so I'm not going to complain going into that pay-per-view. We see the final night of the first phase of the World X Cup. Douglas Williams defeating Sean Spears, Homicide defeating Kiyoshi, Kazuchika Okada defeating Zack Sabre Jr. We see the scoreboard as well, but next week there is a chance all that can change. Team UK could still come in first place with something that's promoted on the night, and I will actually be going more in depth on that episode, I think, because it's a very, very important part of the World X Cup. A team will be eliminated on next week's show, but before then we have Turning Point, a pay-per-view that I'm really looking forward to. If Bound for Glory was the start of a new age and a new era, then I guess Turning Point is the first pay-per-view of that new era. Obviously it's a very fitting name with the new age in such a high profile match. I said before that arguably that's the biggest match of the pay-per-view. That might be overstating it a little bit, because we do have Kurt Angle v Abyss, the immovable object v the unstoppable force in the main event, but the fact that it's up for debate and we have another huge match like Bobby Lashley and Samoa Joe means that this is a very, very strong pay-per-view card. Really happy with that, as ratings actually do go into the 700,000s for the first time in a bit. It's not a good rating, but it's better than where we've been. So thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll be back with me for the upcoming pay-per-view Turning Point 2010.